For a couple of years now, there's been a story hidden in plain sight within Welcome to Bloxburg that few have paid attention to. And with the recent map update that added a bunch of secret references to this, plus even more information found in this year's Halloween update, we're starting to have a huge amount of lore that nobody is talking about. An entire family tree is right in front of our faces, yet everyone is just walking past, unaware of what's hidden just beneath the game's surface. So today, I'm going to talk you through the secret Bloxburg lore that uncovers the history of Bloxburg itself, the story of the Vloxes, and the founder of the town of Bloxburg. Hey glossettes, welcome back. How are you guys doing today? Now today, of course, we are going to dive into some crazy Bloxburg lore. Not only this, but I'm going to be using said lore to actually map out the history of the town and its families. This is going to get pretty interesting, and you join me in my detective agency because we are about to investigate all of the evidence from different parts of the game that actually links in with this story. And there is a lot, but we are first going to go back to where all of this actually started. Now, most of you will remember that back in 2023, we actually got a quest added with the Halloween update that year, aka Sabrina's quest. In this quest, we had to complete different tasks for the witch Sabrina, who would get us to find different books and make different potions until we made a potion that actually allowed us to see ghosts in the game. This would then let us see the ghost of Helen von Vlox, who would then send us to the graveyard to find the key to her mansion. Then once retrieved, we would go through a huge maze in the mansion's basement, find a locker, and then reunite Helen with her husband Victor, which would give us the Halloween haunting trophy. Sounds like a super fun Halloween event, right? That couldn't possibly lead to anything deeper than that, right? Little did we know at the time, but this was the beginning of a lot of Bloxburg lore and the first even real kind of story that was ever hidden in the game. Focusing still on the 2023 Halloween update, there was much more to this than players first noticed. Now this quest obviously revealed to us Helen von Vlox and Victor von Vlox, two ghosts who lived or used to live in the haunted mansion located in the Plenty of Pumpkins Farm and Orchard event plot. When reading the dialogue in this quest, we also find out that Helen unfortunately died due to an experiment gone wrong, and that both of these characters had an interest in science and sorcery and were probably scientists to some degree. It was also rumored that Helen was actually a witch, as sorcery is directly mentioned. Plus, we also got two books in this quest, a potion book and a decipher book, which say that Helen wrote the potion book and Victor wrote the deciphering one. I do also get the feeling that Victor also possibly died soon after Helen did, especially as his ghost does not look aged or older than Helen's ghost. It unfortunately seems like Helen and Victor actually died around the same time. Their house, the haunted mansion, also clearly remained the same since their deaths and was never lived in by any other families after that, as everything is in the exact same state as when they were alive. But this is where things get a little bit deeper, because this led me to wonder, how long ago would that have been? What time period were Victor and Helen from in the first place? When did they actually die? And this actually brings me to our next lot of evidence, where things actually get a little bit more tricky. So this 2023 Halloween update also brought with it some more Victorian style furniture. To be specific, we got 17 Victorian items in that update, and every single Bloxburg item in the game actually has its own description that tells you a little bit about the item and sometimes hides things, because obviously our devs are very sneaky. And the description of these Victorian items was no different, as they actually also had a lot of hidden details about Victor von Vlox. Before I read you the hidden details though, I just want to focus again on a big detail of this story, which is the time period Helen and Victor are from. This furniture line is of course called the Victorian furniture set, so spoiler alert, it's very obvious that Helen and Victor were from the Victorian time period. The Victorian era actually spanned from 1837 until 1901, so that was 94 years, and I decided to narrow this down even further to try and get a more specific year by actually looking at the ghost clothing. Now you can see that Helen and Victor are dressed in kind of very outdated clothing, and looking at the fashion trends from the Victorian era, they did change quite a bit from the start to the end of it. Looking at these two images here, you can see that early Victorian fashion featured bigger dresses and skirts compared to late Victorian fashion, and hats also became more popular. And if we look at Helen's outfit, you can see that she actually has one of these hats, as well as a dress that fits more kind of slim and more similar to the late area of Victorian fashion trends. Victor also has a bow tie and a top hat, and bow ties became much more popular in the late Victorian era too. And I mean, you just have to look at their house too. This is clearly a Victorian style home. You can actually walk around the house for the quest, but you can also kind of go around in free cam and take a good look at the rest of the rooms. And I was looking around their home for more clues and realized, of course, if you go into the house, you won't find any modern technology or barely any electricity, except from one electric lamp in the living room, which, no pun intended, gave me a light bulb idea on how we could work out what year this was all happening in. Now, the first light bulb was actually invented in 1879, so we know all of this had to be happening after that year because they have a lamp. It's obviously clear at this point that Helen and Victor were from the later Victorian time period, which is also when they of course died. If I had to take a good guess at the year they died in, I would roughly say 1885. This fits their fashion trends and things perfectly, and because it's kind of clear that Victor probably died soon after Helen, I'm just gonna say they both died in the same year of 1885 to make this a lot easier. This then made me question how old both of them could be too, as they're quite clearly adults, and from reading the descriptions of the furniture items, which we're gonna look at later on, we also find out that especially Victor achieved a lot in his lifetime, and we also know from looking closer at the house that there's actually a nursery with a crib in it, so this actually reveals that Helen and Victor von Vlox actually had a child. And because the child was still in a crib when they passed away, I would say that the child was probably around 1 to 2 years old at this stage. And this mystery child is actually something we are going to talk about later on in the video, as this actually may be far more important than we first realized. Back to their age though, I would honestly kind of put them at around 30 years old. Once again, I'm just going to say they were the same age for convenience. This would mean that they died around 30 in 1885 and were probably born around 1855. So by looking closely, we can actually paint a great picture of Helen and Victor and what time period they actually lived and died in. And we also know that Victor and Helen were married, with a mystery child who isn't revealed. But enough yap about that, it's time to do some more detective work and go back to the items I mentioned. So these 17 items all have unique descriptions. Most of them don't say anything relevant and just kind of describe the item or briefly mention Victor and the fact that the house is clearly haunted, but 6 of these actually go a little bit deeper and tell us a little more about Victor and other residents of the town that slowly begin to be linked together. First up, this globe here confirms what I said earlier about Victor achieving a lot in his life. The globe description reads, since Victor von Vlox was an avid traveler, he needed a globe to show his many friends the vast places he had explored. After he settled in Bloxburg, he liked to look at the globe and reminisce over his many days filled with exploration and adventure. And we actually have these 2 chair items which actually reveal the creator of the Victorian furniture set. They both say the same thing, just slightly worded differently, so I'm only going to show you this one, but they say, this elegant chair was designed to be sat in for hours during long dinners with important people. The S shape on top of the chair's back was Simon the craftsman's symbol, which he put on all of the furniture he made. It serves as a distinct way of recognizing the distinguished furniture brand. So now we know another resident of Bloxburg from the Victorian time period called Simon, who was a craftsman who made the furniture for Victor and also had this as his logo for his furniture brand. And is it just me, or does this look a little similar to another furniture brand we know too? Anyways, next we have this end table, which reads, this end table is a beautiful yet practical furniture piece that was handcrafted to match the rest of Victor von Vlox's furniture. Victor's friend Tom was very fond of this particular end table, so much that Victor gifted a similar one to Tom when he became mayor of Bloxburg. And this is yet again introducing a new character to this story, Tom. And I know exactly what you're all thinking. Glossie, that's Bloxburg Tom, right? As in our existing mayor Tom, it says mayor of Bloxburg right there. Like, how could this make sense? That would mean Tom would be like over 100 years old, and he still looks pretty useful to me. So what does this mean? Well, I can confirm that no, Tom is not a mortal or a time traveler. The Tom they're referring to here is actually a completely different Tom. And if you let me finish reading out these furniture descriptions, that's actually what we are going to dive into next, so just patience, okay? Anyways, this confirms Victor and this Tom guy who became mayor were pretty good friends, and the next item is another table, which adds onto this even more. And this says, this Victorian coffee table has held many coffee cups, as Victor von Vlox has a particular passion for coffee, often with just a tiny bit of lemon in it. He and his close friend Tom had many heated discussions over this table, and you can almost see a stain left from one heated debate. And not only is this a bit of a Easter egg for coffee stain, but this confirms that they were close friends and had many heated discussions together, and at this point it's clear that Victor was also pretty wealthy and high class too. Victor and Helen seem to have a lot of money. They had this huge luxurious house, they traveled the world, and they even have a Fabergé egg in this picture. And finally we have this chair here, which reads, in this armchair Victor von Vlox enjoyed many hours reading about his favorite subjects, especially about unique objects and strange places. This comfortable chair is perfect for sitting and passing time researching the many mysteries of Bloxburg. So it doesn't say a whole lot, but I did want to include this because the mention of the mysteries of Bloxburg did pique my interest a little bit. But that's pretty much it for the furniture descriptions, and that was it for the update in 2023. This is everything that was found in the game until it went completely quiet. A whole year later in 2024, this Halloween update did actually get the quest added back, but nothing was actually new. Nothing was actually added to this lore until the Bloxburg map update on the 28th of June this year in 2025, which is over a year and a half since the original update in 2023, which introduced this story. But in the map revamp, we actually got some surprising new lore that linked in pretty heavily to the Vloxes. The most obvious and interesting is this statue here, which you can find directly in the middle of Bloxburg town. Here we see a man with a long beard, a top hat, and a blueprint map type thing in his hand, as well as a monocle, and of course wearing the same Victorian fashion style that Victor actually wears. If we look closer too, you can actually see this hair, which is the same hair that Bloxburg Tom wears as well. But if we actually read the plaque at the bottom of the statue, this makes everything a lot clearer, because the plaque actually says Tom 1, founder of Bloxburg. That's right, the Tom that was mentioned to be Victor's close friend was the founder of Bloxburg. He founded the entire town, and if it's not obvious enough, no, this is not the Tom we know today. This was the first Tom. This was Tom the First, revealing that the Tom we have as a mayor right now is probably like his great-great-great-grandson, as this is actually two different Toms. This also tells us that Bloxburg was actually founded originally back when this Tom was alive, which was back in the Victorian time period where Victor and Helen were alive. And Tom probably founded this town with the help of Victor and Helen to some degree, especially with them having so many heated discussions with Victor, which were probably to do with obviously things to do with the town. We actually also have more evidence to back up the fact that they were involved and also very close to Tom the First as well. So another little secret that we actually got in the map revamp is a place next to the observatory called Victor's View. Victor actually has a whole area named after him in the map, and one of the benches up here even has the same symbol as the Victorian furniture set, meaning this bench was also crafted by Simon way back in the time period they were all alive. Then we also have this sign hidden in the turtle pond that's all kind of rusty, and this actually reads Helen Heights. This is located at the Peak Camp, and it's clearly an old sign long forgotten about. It's pretty much buried underwater, so it does make sense that the Peak Mountain area probably used to be called Helen Heights when the town was first founded, and the Vlox family was heavily connected with Tom the First, hence why there is two different areas of the map named after both Helen and Victor. So because it's clear that Bloxburg was founded around this time, I would say Bloxburg was possibly founded in around 1880. This would be a few years before Helen and Victor died, and with them both dying in 1885, maybe Victor's View and Helen Heights were even added in memory of the two, considering that Tom was so close to them. But it's really cool to be able to kind of finally build up a picture of Bloxburg's history, and it's even cooler that the developers have been putting this much effort into building up this lore kind of in the background. But it doesn't even end here, because this year's Halloween update brought even more details to this story, connecting Bloxburg's most known NPCs like Susan and Sabrina to the Vlox family and expanding more on the first mayor Tom. So back when the update dropped a few weeks ago, we actually got new Victorian furniture to finally extend the set that we got in 2023, and of course extend the lore with these 10 new Victorian items. Now only one description of these actually really told us anything useful, but it did tell us something quite shocking, and said item was actually this Victor's Victorian double bed. Now the description of this bed reads, several of these large luxurious beds were handcrafted by Simon Joyner to be used in the many guest rooms of the Vlox mansion. Many notable people stayed there over the years, including world-renowned painter Ethel Clementine and Tom the First, Bloxburg's first mayor. Now first of all, this introduces a new character, Ethel Clementine, who's apparently a world-renowned painter of this time period. The Bloxburg wiki does actually mention this and say that this might be inspired by a real painter too, who has a very similar name, but it also mentions Tom the First and specifically says Bloxburg's first mayor to emphasize the fact that this isn't the Tom we have today. And thirdly, which is honestly the coolest thing mentioned here, it actually mentions Simon again, who is of course the craftsman of the Victorian furniture, but it actually uses his full name for the first time ever, which is revealed to be Simon Joyner. Now read that carefully, Simon Joyner. Does that name sound familiar to anyone else? Well, if you play Bloxburg literally ever, you've probably seen this furniture store called Fancy Furniture. This is ran by Susan, who is one of the most hated NPCs in the game because of the fact that her store was so ugly and outdated, but upon closer look, you'll actually find out that Susan's full name is Susan Joyner. So we have Simon Joyner, an old Victorian furniture maker from the 1800s, and Susan Joyner, a furniture store owner from, well, 2025. And they are very obviously family. They are actually related to each other. Going back to Tom the First too, Tom the mayor we have today is also very obviously related to Tom the First, hence the similarities in the statue with the same hair, and the fact that they're all called Tom because Tom is probably a family name that has been passed down. So that is 3 different families we've managed to uncover, which are all connected to each other by their ancestors, and there's actually a 4th member of the Vlox family tree that we are yet to uncover in this video. But now we know all of the ancestors of some of today's NPCs, it leads me to think, what is the relation specifically? Simon Joyner, the Vloxes, and Tom the First, past. We know we're adults in, let's say, 1880 before Helen and Victor passed away. Then we have Susan and Tom today in 2025, and we also know it's canonically 2025 in Bloxburg because each year we get the New Year celebration in-game that actually specifies the year on a town hall, so we know the game is in the same year that we are, and 1880 was exactly 145 years ago, so let's work out roughly how many family generations could have fit within these 145 years. Now, of course, this is a very rough estimate as these are NPCs and this isn't real, so I'm going to use the same logic I used for the Vloxes, and let's just say, for example, all of the members of these families had a child at 30 years old, as that's kind of like the most common age for it. So if we say, for example, Simon Joyner had a child in 1880, the same as the Vloxes did at around 30 years old, then 30 years later that child grew up to have their own child in 1910, and then another 30 years later this child had a child in 1940, then another 30 years there's another child born in 1970, then that child grows up and they actually have a child who would be Susan Joyner. This is the best way to work out how many generations are in between, and using this we can say that Simon Joyner is Susan's great-great-great-grandfather. If we use this exact same logic for Tom the First and Tom the First would be Tom's great-great-great-grandfather too, meaning that there's also been 6 different Bloxburg mayors since the town was first founded. It's also common for people to pass down their name to their children, meaning our Tom today is actually Tom the 6th, which is pretty interesting. However, there was one more item added in this year's Halloween update that I haven't mentioned yet, and this was the cemetery statue of Helen von Vlox. Now, the description of this item actually says a statue of the late Helen von Vlox, a well-regarded witch and researcher, as well as a loving mother and wife. Helen was said to have stood as straight and proud in life as she does as the stone statue. So this actually confirms that she was in fact a witch as well as a researcher, and it confirms that she was definitely a mother. So her and Victor did 100% have a child. So this mystery child is what we'll be focusing on for the final section of this video. Now, Bloxburg took part in this year's Roblox Halloween Spotlight event, as most of us know, meaning there was 2 different badges that we needed to get, the second of which they actually brought back Sabrina's quest for you to complete. Remember the one we looked at right at the start of this video? They brought this back, but they did actually change a few things about it, like the maze and some of Sabrina's tasks to actually kind of fit around the new map, but they also changed some of the dialogue from the characters, which reveals something pretty shocking. So at the end of the quest, Victor actually says this. He says, "Oh Helen, thy passing was grievous, yet we endured, our descendants live on. Our legacy could not be safer in the hands of young Sabrina." So he directly mentions Sabrina, obviously the witch at the snack stand, and then Helen also asks you to thank Sabrina for her. She says, "You have my deepest gratitude for thy aid. Pray extend my gratitude to Sabrina, for through you both I am with my family again." Then when you talk to Sabrina right at the end, Sabrina actually reveals that Von Vlox used to be her family name way back in the day. So Sabrina is actually related to the Von Vlox family, and she's a witch just like Helen was. So Helen and Victor are her great-great-great-grandparents, and Helen and Victor's baby is Sabrina's great-great-grandparent, which is pretty crazy and a really clever way to tie it all together. So we actually have 3 families and all of their younger generations all revealed. It's just so interesting, and it's really cool to see that the town of Bloxburg has so much kind of history put behind it now. But that is pretty much everything. As of right now, there's not any other pieces of lore I found related to the Von Vloxes or the other families, but I'm hoping that they'll continue to add more and expand this story and reveal more mysteries for the town. The new map is foundation for so many possibilities for the future, especially with some of the spooky areas we have in it, and I can't wait to see what they're actually going to do with this. But if you enjoyed this video, please let me know and make sure to subscribe, as I do have a lot of big Bloxburg information videos on their way, as well as of course Christmas content. And also let me know if you'd like more videos on the mysteries of the game, because I really want to do one talking about the Dom theories too. But that is all for today. As per usual, a huge thank you to all my channel members who will be on screen now. Thank you so much for joining the channel, and my Discord boosters. Thank you so much for boosting the server, and my merch buyers from February. Thank you so much for buying the merch drop. I love you all, and in general, I love you all so much, glossettes. I will see you all later. XOXO, Glossy Girl.